the policymakers within the political economy made a major mistake when the TARP bill was signed into law to provide debt relief for the one percenters on Wall Street and not incorporating debt relief for the students.
My name is Esmeralda Simmons. I'm the Executive Director of the Center for Law and Social Justice. And tonight we have had the first installation in a series called Creating a Black Financial Legacy, which talks about how people of African descent and people of color in the New York City area and across the country need to start focusing on building our wealth. We are way below where we need to be. We can create it because we have tremendous income power and have tremendous spending power. We simply don't use that power to recreate our own wealth. So that was discussed tonight with fantastic panelists. Attorneys, we had public policy people, we had folks who deal with personal finance and from the Restoration Corporation, and once again, this was, solutions were given. Solutions were given so that people would know that this is not a problem that we cannot solve. But we need to jump on it. It's significant that we're doing it on this day because this is a new beginning for us, because we will create black wealth. Please go to our website, clsj.org, clsj.org. The information is up there for the next event in this series, which is going to be February 10th, Friday, February 10th. Be here. It's free. It's 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. And that is going to be focusing on black business, black entrepreneurship. How do we invest in business? How do we become business people? How do we have successful businesses? How do we finance our businesses? This, again, is information for us, by us, so that we can do what we need to do to move our community forward. It's all taking place at your college, Medgar Evers College in Crown Heights area of Brooklyn. The address is 1638 Bedford Avenue at the corner of Crown Street. And Medgar Evers College is part of the City University of New York. And we have professors here. We have folks who the Center for Law and Social Justice is here as part of Medgar Evers College, and we will continue to have these discussions with our community.
My name is Ty Abrams, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of an education organization called Admission Squad, where we help black and brown students in New York City get into top high schools. I came to the Black Wealth Matters seminar with the Center of Law and Social Justice because I wanted to learn more about the state of the wealth situation in the black community and what we can do about it. I found out a startling statistic that it would take us 228 years to catch up to what we call white wealth. That was alarming because, of course, no one can do that in one lifetime. So I think the urgency was on for us to really make this a priority as a community and not to wait until it's too late. One of the communities that stands out the most to me is the Jewish community, and that something called the Hebrew schools were actually mentioned tonight. What Hebrew schools are is, these weekend schools where they're actually training up the students and training up the kids to really understand the history, their plight, what their struggles are as a community, and then they're re-emphasizing the importance of what we call group economics, which is when I'm going to start a business and be able to have businesses and industries set up within my community where we can share our own dollar. So that type of education is happening, but what I notice about our community is we tend to have a 100% of a reliance on the public school education system. When you look at the Jewish community, they recognize that the public school is going to be almost like a baseline expectation of education, but they're going to need to do more. And they make sure that they invest in that extra support for their youth. Being that I'm in the education space, one of my biggest priorities is looking to see how we can get this conversation around wealth happening much earlier. I mean, within age 0 to 5. I have a niece. I talk to her all the time about what it means to own. I talk to her about what it looks like to amass wealth and assets. We talk about it in a very light way, but these concepts are being pushed into her mindset from very young. So I do believe that we need to maximize that 0 to 18 age range where we're pushing these concepts into their brains so that they're armed with the right information when they go into the workforce.
Kibibi Oyo, local resident in the area. I think one main thing that happened was we got some concrete steps to developing some financial wealth for our community. I think that was the most important thing, and a lot of history and connections that we're going to need to move forward. Some of the things that we've always been doing were correct. Susus, having our own collectives to do things with. Those things on a larger scale will help the community overall.
I learned a lot. I know I have a couple of books I need to pick up and read on the impact, the psychological impact, as well as the economic and social impact of this disenfranchisement that we actually deal with. As a collective of people, we don't support each other. And it said if we'd use 10 more cents out of our dollar, we'd have a million? I have it written down, but if you use just 12 cents, 15 cents out of your dollar in a black business, we can educate, empower, and employ more black people, and thus, strengthen the economy. So there's a lot of things that we can do individually as well as collectively.
My name is Laree Daniel Favors. I'm the General Counsel at the Center for Law and Social Justice, and we are just wrapping up our first installment of the Black Wealth Matters Building a Financial Legacy series, which is a series we're hosting here from January through April, where we'll be exploring different aspects of the economy within the black community. One of the solutions that came out of the discussion was a recognition that we often don't have access to the same financial resources that other communities do, be it bank loans, be it business investment opportunities, but we do have access to organically grown financial exchange programs that we often bring from the places that we immigrated from and bring here with us. And so that included things like Susus, micro-lending, and other forms of organic, I almost like to say grassroots financing that really takes us outside of the realm of needing a bank loan and allows us to pool resources in a way that recognizes our kinship networks and in a way that allows us to really maximize some of the collective assets that we have in a way that may not be recognized by the broader economy. And it's important to recognize that anything that we do is an outgrowth of the history that precedes us. We're all historical products, so the things that happened in the past impact us today. One of those things that came up in the discussion this evening was this continuing legacy of slavery and the way that lingering senses of inferiority, infighting, and other forms of distrust really do plague our community and manifest in ways that they don't in others, which is to be expected when you understand the legacy of slavery and the way that we were intentionally pit against each other. Acknowledging that, we can now I recognize that that is an issue and then incorporate needing to plan around that within our economic planning. So if you know you come from a community or a family or a home group that may have infighting, that may have challenges, but you do want to find ways of pooling your capital, sitting down with an attorney and outlining your goals as a group so that attorney can help you drop a family contract, can help you drop documentation that says this is how you participate in this family venture. And if you decide later on you no longer want to participate, this is how you can exit from that family venture without disrupting the family, tearing apart relationships, and causing pain and sorrow for the next generation. So really recognizing a marriage between organic organizing within our community and then using the tools that exist within our professional class to help us cement that. Again, one of the things that we talked about this evening was the fact that in other communities you have a dollar that is able to circulate numerous times before it has to leave that community. So in a community that is self-sufficient economically, if I am hired by someone from my community, he or she is paying me, and then I can go to the store and buy my food from someone who's in my community. I can go and pay my rent to a landlord or pay my bank loan to a bank that is owned by people in my community. I can raise my children up in public schools and then provide educational experiences for them that will supplement for them and teach them in the values that my community holds dear, and really use those types of tools and to bounce and circulate that money. For us, as soon as I get paid, 9 times out of 10, I'm not being employed by a black person, so my money isn't even coming from within the black community. If I want to buy diapers, if I want to buy shoes, if I want to buy nail polish, if I want to eat something besides soul food, it can be hard to access a black source for that product. And so we really do need to think beyond the home-based businesses and use that as a base to really go out into professionalizing and mass duplicating some of the financial successes that we can create. Center for Law and Social Justice, we are a racial justice legal center, 30 years old, based here at Medgar Evers College, which is a part of the CUNY system. You can visit our website, clsj.org, and follow us online at Twitter or Instagram, CLSJ_MEC. I want to say what's up to all the ancestors and the elders who were laying the foundation for economic sustainability and who knew that we would need to own our own economy before we knew what economies were.
My name is Roger Green. I'm a senior fellow for equity and democratic practice at the Du Bois Bunch Center, which is located at Medgar Evers College. So we had a discussion today talking about the challenges of building wealth within the African American community and try to make it clear that the problems that we're facing is not simply about the issue of income inequality, but it's about asset disparities, that the way that you build wealth within society today is by having broad-based control of property, land, stocks, bonds, things of that nature. And then we talked about the fact that we need a new political economy that democratizes the the economic institutions and businesses to enable workers to have more access to capital and also to property. In Brooklyn, we've launched what's called the Central Brooklyn Commonwealth Initiative, which we're doing in conjunction with two major unions, 1199 Health and Hospital Workers Union and New York State Nurses Association. And the idea is to create programs to build health and wealth, looking at the supply chain in New York City, where between the Greater New York Hospital Association, that's the league of all the hospitals, the voluntary private hospitals, and the Health and Hospitals Corporation, there is a supply chain of over $50 billion a year. We need the new regulatory policies from the city and state government to redirect these resources that come from our tax dollars back into our communities to enhance sustainable community economic development and to build generational wealth. We just finished a research study that we did in conjunction with MIT CoLab, where we interviewed a number of those constituents, over 600, in a qualitative analysis and community asset mapping in that area. The research study just came out the other day, and the findings are basically that people are scared. But they also have ideas, and one of the ideas that they propose is to address the whole issue of population displacement, or not gentrification, but we call pervasive racial resegregation of certain neighborhoods, that we need to control our land. And so we're proposing a community land and conservation trust, that any housing that's built should be built on a 99-year lease that's controlled by the community and organized labor in those communities where most of our folks are concentrated. And we could do that by creating, for instance, what's called limited equity co-ops, where everybody can have some aspect of equity in their homes, but also that it's controlled by the community. Then we talked about also creating a new electric grid. The Brownsville grid is about to be it is already dilapidated. There will be government investments in rebuilding it and private sector investments. We want to ensure that the energy grid is controlled by the community, again, in a limited equity co-op, placing it in the commons, and that it would be decentralized and renewable energy that also will help our health, because we reduce pollutants that comes from the carbon footprint, that also will impact on our health. So that way we create an opportunity to build both health and wealth. And then finally, one of the things that's happening in Brownsville with the existing housing, there are a lot of respiratory illnesses that exist because of mold infestation, mildew, pestilence. And we've called for a program to retrofit those buildings and doing it in a way where young folks in the community will be trained up and to do that work. And so we have a term for that where we're saying basically that this can address the culture of violence in that community also by creating jobs, to do the retrofitting. And then that addresses the healthcare crisis and the housing crisis. And so, we have a program that we're pushing. We're just saying our slogan is we need a program where we can exchange killing guns for construction guns. So that's where we're at. We've got to create institutions that enable us to control the labor market in our communities. And that means, in our humble opinion, working with a union like 1199 and creating a new construction model with them within the healthcare industry linked to these proposed health enterprise zones. What we're calling for is that each of the hospitals would have what would be defined as a health enterprise zone that would encompass those communities where there's also high levels of unemployment, population displacement, environmental degradation, economic inequality, and asset disparities. Those would be the indices. And that in those zones, we would control the jobs. And we would do it also by creating, we're calling for the creation of a school named after one of our great civil rights leaders, Cleve Robinson, who was one of Dr. King's major allies, came out of organized labor. And what we're negotiating now is the creation of a school wherein students come in, they receive their apprenticeship training year-round, and they get a stipend while working on these projects year-round, time on task for educating them in terms of how to work in the green economy. But when they graduate in their senior year, they receive a certificate of mastery. They receive the Regents Diploma, but most importantly, they receive a union card, guaranteeing them employment and a living wage within a union like 1199 to do this type of work in terms of addressing what we call the social determinants of health, which is that if you have a job, you're going to live longer. Like that. What's up to all the people in the community who have committed themselves to continue to struggle for economic and social justice, and in our case, creating a program for health justice and economic democracy.